Okay, so the sound quality on my video seems to have recuperated, so hopefully that will be okay for this video. I should also say I have some mouth ulcers at the moment. They're somewhat painful, so if I sound slightly slurred, that is the reason. I want to talk about the subject of so-called tiger parenting. Um, this has become prominent partly through the work of Amy Chua, who's a very controversial writer. She wrote Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother a few years ago, and that provoked quite at times fierce debate over, well, essentially the right approach to parenting. I should make a disclaimer. I'm not a parent, okay? That is quite an important point to say. Now, would my perspective be different if I was a parent? Honestly, I think it would only be different so far as that I would have experience, but I don't think my outlook would be different. Um, and basically, my outlook is that there has to be some sort of middle ground. So there's two sort of what I would consider extreme thought processes in this. Obviously, there's more than two types of parenting, but what I'm talking about is there is either the sort of parent who basically sees himself as their child's best friend or friend, and they don't believe in any sort of control. They completely spoil their kids or kid, and there's absolutely no sort of concept of responsibility either as a parent or put onto the child to be responsible in life. This is clearly not good for anyone. And there is a problem in that when people complain, oh, the government should mind its own business, there are certain areas where I do believe in government intervention where actions impact others. So I don't really agree with this meme that sometimes goes around that don't like this, don't do that, don't like this, don't do that, etc. The problem with that is there are some life choices that do impact other people, impact society, a wide range of things. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to stick to the issue of parenting. So someone is lax at parenting if they have no control over their kids. Yeah, that does impact society. I've been in situations where I've been in a coffee shop, or I remember actually was waiting in the Gare du Nord in Paris. I'd missed my train, and this kid came over and started kind of messing with the bag that I had. It was obviously annoying, and I kind of looked at the parent like, "Can you kind of take some control?" And after a few minutes, the parent finally sort of gestured for the kid to come over. But that was disgraceful that it took me to really hint at the parent to do something. And I'm not of the sort of Victorian mind that children are should be seen and not heard. Children should be allowed to be children, and I'll come to that when I get to the other side of this argument. But it really frustrates me that some parents have absolutely no self control, have no control. Well, no self control, which is probably part of the problem, but no control over children. It's nonsense, complete nonsense, and it is incredibly selfish, incredibly stupid, and they deserve all the criticism they get. Um, when you're in a public place, you have responsibility over your children for an obvious reason, keeping them safe, but also so that they can bother other people. Young children, especially, have a tendency to not understand boundaries and not understand that there are certain things you shouldn't do. And if parents don't instill that sense of boundaries, then they're going to be developing from a bratty child, actually, which isn't entirely their own fault because they don't know anything else, to a selfish adult. So I really have no time or respect for parents who have no sort of control whatsoever over their children. The same applies, to parents who don't instill a sense of thinking about other people. So parents who spoil the children are basically bringing up children who are not grateful for things that they get in life, and then they end up as selfish people. So yeah, I really have no respect for that. But there is the other extreme, and I'm going to focus perhaps a little bit more on that. Amy Chua's school of thought is that it's sort of the extreme opposite. She would probably agree with everything I've just said, but the problem is she takes it to another extreme of kind of depriving children of childhood, of super disciplinarianism, to the point where it becomes an obsession about success. And the problem I have with tiger parenting is I think it's got a lot more to do with the parent's ego than the child. So, this typical mentality of an extreme tiger parent would be unless you get 100%, you're not good enough. You get 99%, that's not good enough. Now, that to me is damaging. I understand that there are certain endeavors in life people need to start very young, essentially as a child. So, for example, Olympic gymnasts start very young, um, and there are a lot of other professions. But even in areas where people need to start young in life in order to perfect their endeavor, at some point there has to be a childhood allowed. What do I mean by that? I mean playing games with other children. I mean having fun. I mean just having a childhood. So when I see parents who demand perfection from their children, I think it's got a lot more to do with the parents' ego than really wanting the best for their child. Because robbing a child of a childhood to me is not kindness, it's not wanting the best for them. It's the adult just wanting their ego to come through. They will say, oh, but we're in the long run they'll thank us because we're giving them a good life. There's nothing wrong with inspiring your child. There's nothing wrong with saying work hard for what you want. There's nothing wrong with encouraging and motivating your child. But I think there are red lines. And to me, Amy Chua's approach is borderline, um, well, I've no respect for it. I won't get into using profanities, but I don't have much time for her. Based on the interviews I've seen, based on the statements and so on, she just strikes me as someone who is borderline sociopathic. She wants her children, and I know her daughters have defended her, but as far as I'm concerned, they've been brainwashed into that. Because the sort of mentality, and it isn't just Amy Chua, there's others, that sort of mentality is basically telling someone they're worthless unless they're perfect. Now, why is this a problem? It's a problem for an obvious reason. Nobody is perfect. It doesn't matter how good you are at something, everyone has their flaws. And the problem with tiger parenting is it teaches people, it doesn't actually teach self respect and value. It teaches the opposite. It teaches that unless you're perfect, then you're worthless. That to me isn't loving, it's not caring, and it isn't even instilling a sense of responsibility. It's just an extreme approach. So I have no time for that. The other issue I take with Amy Chua is she has borderline racist views because she is essentially saying she's made generalization of Western mothers. She, as I understand, I don't know if she's Chinese American or she was born in China. I think she was born in China and she grew up in the US, but her attitude is basically Asian mothers are better because they are tiger mothers. Well, firstly, that is not factually true because there are actually quite a lot of Asian parents who also spoil their children. Especially now, there's this phenomena with China's one child policy. There's actually a phenomena developing of little so called emperors who are basically turning up into brats. Not long ago, I don't know if it was Beijing or Shanghai, but there was this young guy, and he actually verbally accosted his parents in the street because the apartment they bought him wasn't good enough. Now, that's the exact opposite of what Amy Chu claims about Asian parenting. You can't make a generalization like that. And there's some Westerners that buy into it and pander to the same nonsense and say things like, oh, Western parents all spoil their children. You can't generalize. I think probably it would seem on the surface to be more prevalent in the West, but that's not to say, I mean, I would use, and without getting too much into personal details here, my brother and his wife are great parents. Okay, people might say I'm biased because I'm related. I'm the uncle, but when I see them getting a perfect balance. I see parents who clearly love their children, care greatly for their children, but they also have red lines. They allow their children to be children, they allow their children to play, have a good time, they give them presents, but they also draw red lines when my niece doesn't eat her dinner. She's 4 years old. When she doesn't eat her dinner, my brother puts a red line. You're not going to get sweets until you eat your dinner. Now that to me is good parenting. And people might sound biased, but this is what I honestly see. Um, and if I ever become a parent, I've no idea if I will or not. At the moment, I don't. It's not in my sort of plan. But if I ever do, I would strive to get that sort of balance because I think that is the sort of balance that will equip people for dealing with the real world. Um, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. Everyone has their flaws, but it seems common sense to me that you draw red lines. So if your child is being badly behaved, you you reprimand them harshly if necessary. For example, if they're bullying another child or they're doing something that is impacting another person, you have to draw red lines. I'm not saying, by the way, physical abuse. I'm not talking about that. Person, I don't think I would use. I wouldn't hit my child. Actually, it's illegal now in the UK, as far as I know. But I know the law is different in different countries. But I think you can. I think you could be, by the way, instill discipline without using physical contact. I don't think physical, hitting a child is necessary. If it was really if they were doing something really bad, like say they were hurting an animal or something, even then I probably wouldn't use physical, like I wouldn't hit them, but I would yell at them and I would make it clear that I was very angry and that what they were doing was dead wrong. So yeah, I think really it is about balance. Now, people hail Amy True as some sort of prophet of good parenting. I just think she's an arrogant egomaniac. I don't have much time for her based on the interviews I've seen, and I think a racist sort of language. And I say that because she's making generalizations of Asian versus white people. That sort of language is it's reckless, and it doesn't help anybody. Because she's trying to claim that all Asian parents are good and all Western parents are bad. If I was a Western mother, I would be telling her where to go. I mean, who the hell does she think she is? And I think it's unfortunate that she's got a fortune out of spewing out this rubbish. That's just my own opinion. Um, and it isn't about saying that there's anything wrong with a parent motivating their child. So if a kid has talent, I don't think there's anything wrong with a parent kind of fostering that and saying, yeah, that's good. If you're good at a piano, if you're good at, sure, encourage them, but don't shackle them. Balance. Come on, people, balance. This is common sense. It's not about being so rigid that you're robbing a child of a childhood and you're expecting them to be perfect. But at the same time, it isn't about being so lax. And, parents shouldn't see themselves as their child's friend. They might be amicable and friendly, but I think there's a difference between that and being a friend. Actually, this is probably not related, but I'll mention it anyway. I've just watched a documentary about Sid Vicious, the famous punk rocker. Apparently, he had a very codependent relationship with his mother. She was a heroin addict. Um, and yeah, you can see why he developed the problems he did because they had a relationship like friends rather than a mother son relationship. And, I'm only mentioning that in passing. So it's all about getting the boundaries right. Um, Let me know what you think. If you are a parent, I'd like to know your perspective because you obviously have experience more than I would, and I respect that. But I'm still allowed an opinion because this does impact other people. How people parent impacts wider society. So I don't agree with those who say, oh, it's entirely one's own business. I mean, I wouldn't go up to someone and say, oh, you're a bad parent, but, well, actually, in certain circumstances, I might. If it's the same as I don't want to compare children to dogs, but I get really annoyed when I see dog owners who have no sort of responsibility. Our beloved little Jester, who passed away last year, I loved him to bits, but I was a responsible dog owner. I wouldn't, let him off the leash if I thought he was going to get into a fight with another dog or whatever. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. It's about balance. I think that is common sense. So I have no time for the tiger parenting concept. I don't think it helps people later in life. All it does, as far as I'm concerned, it's just channeling the ego of the parent through the child. And the other extreme, like I say, is just as bad. Let me know your thoughts.